The blood on her feet left dark stains in the dust behind her, each step a prayer that she would somehow find civilization before the desert claimed her completely. Katherine Claire had been walking for 2 days since the stagecoach overturned, leaving her the only survivor amid twisted metal and bodies she tried not to remember. The soles of her shoes had worn through hours ago, leaving raw flesh to meet unforgiving rock and sand beneath the merciless Arizona sun of 1877. She stumbled forward, her vision swimming with heat and exhaustion. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, a cruel expanse of sage and sand that offered no mercy to those foolish enough to traverse it unprepared. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her tongue thick in her mouth. The canteen she had salvaged from the wreckage had run dry that morning, and she knew with terrible certainty that she would not survive another night in this wasteland. Katherine fell to her knees, unable to take another step. The pain in her feet had evolved beyond simple agony into something that consumed her entire being. She looked down at them and immediately wished she had not. The flesh was torn and blistered, caked with blood and dirt. She could see the white of bone in places. Tears streamed down her cheeks, cutting clean lines through the dust that coated her face. She thought of her family back in Boston, of the letters she had written, promising that San Francisco, California, would be a new beginning. At 22 years old, she had been so full of hope and determination, traveling west to take a position as a school teacher in a growing city desperate for educated women. Now she would die here, alone and forgotten, her bones picked clean by vultures. The sound of hoofbeats reached her through the haze of pain and delirium. Katherine lifted her head, squinting against the sun. A figure approached on horseback, wavering in the heat shimmer like something conjured from her dying imagination. She tried to call out but managed only a weak croak. The rider drew closer, resolving into solid form. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing dusty clothes and a wide-brimmed hat, pulled low against the sun. He rode with the easy confidence of someone who belonged to this harsh land, who understood its moods and dangers. As he reached her, he swung down from his horse with fluid grace, his boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. "Madam?" His voice was deep and steady, touched with concern. He crouched beside her, and Katherine found herself looking into the most striking gray eyes she had ever seen. His face was weathered and tanned, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of years spent squinting into the sun. A dark beard covered his jaw, and beneath the brim of his hat, she could see brown hair curling slightly at his collar. He looked to be perhaps 27 or 28, old enough to have been hardened by this land, but young enough to retain a certain vitality in his features. "Water," Katherine managed to whisper. He reached for the canteen at his hip without hesitation, uncapping it and bringing it to her lips. "Slow now," he instructed gently. "Just small sips." The water was the most delicious thing Katherine had ever tasted. She wanted to gulp it down desperately, but his firm hand controlled the flow, ensuring she did not make herself sick. After a few swallows, he pulled it away despite her protest. "More in a minute," he promised. His gaze traveled down her body, assessing her condition with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to survival situations. When he saw her feet, his jaw tightened. "Jesus!" he breathed. "How long you been walking?" 2 days, Katherine said, her voice barely audible. "The stagecoach. It overturned." He nodded, understanding dawning in his expression. "I heard about that. Mexican spring route. They found the wreckage yesterday, but said there were no survivors." "They did not look hard enough," Katherine said bitterly. "No, madam, I reckon they did not." He straightened, looking around at the barren landscape. "Nearest town is Copper Ridge, about 15 miles northeast. But there's a ranch about 8 miles south. That's where I'm headed." Katherine felt despair crush down on her chest. "I cannot walk another step. You should leave me. Take what you need from my belongings." The cowboy looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. "I'm Marcus Langford," he said, "and I'm not the kind of man who leaves a lady to die in the desert." Without another word, he bent and scooped her into his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. Katherine gasped, her arms instinctively going around his neck. "What are you doing?" "Getting you somewhere safe," Marcus said simply. He carried her to his horse, a sturdy bay gelding that watched their approach with calm, intelligent eyes. The horse wore saddlebags that looked well packed, and a bedroll was tied behind the saddle. Marcus shifted Katherine's weight, settling her more securely in his arms before reaching for the saddle horn. "You cannot carry me all the way," Katherine protested weakly. "It is too far. I am too heavy." Marcus glanced down at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Madam, you're light as a feather, and I've carried heavier things farther distances for less important reasons." He boosted himself into the saddle with Katherine still in his arms, an impressive feat of strength and balance. Once seated, he adjusted her so she sat across his lap, cradled against his chest. "Just hold on and try to rest." Katherine wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some semblance of dignity and independence, but she was simply too exhausted and in too much pain. She let her head rest against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of leather and horse and something clean and masculine that belonged to him alone. The horse began walking at Marcus's gentle urging, and Katherine felt the steady rhythm of movement begin to lull her, despite everything. "What were you doing out here?" she asked after a while, needing to stay awake, needing to know about this man who had appeared like an answer to prayer. "I work cattle," Marcus said. "Was tracking some strays that wandered off from the Broken Arrow Ranch. That's where I work, where we're headed now. The owner, Samuel Hartwell, he's a good man. He'll see you get proper care." "I was supposed to be in San Francisco by now," Katherine said, the words tumbling out. "Teaching position. I came all the way from Boston." "That's a long journey," Marcus said. His arms were steady around her, his hold secure but gentle. "You got family waiting for you there?" "No family. I have friends, people who arranged the position. My parents died 3 years ago. Cholera outbreak." Katherine closed her eyes against the memory. "After that, Boston felt empty. I wanted a fresh start somewhere new." "I'm sorry about your folks," Marcus said, and she could hear genuine sympathy in his voice. "This country's hard on people sometimes, but it's also got a way of offering second chances to those who need them." They rode in silence for a while. Katherine found herself acutely aware of Marcus's presence, of the solid warmth of his body against hers, of the strength in the arms that held her. She had never been carried by a man before, had never been in such intimate proximity with someone who was essentially a stranger. Yet somehow it did not feel improper or frightening. It felt safe. The sun beat down relentlessly, and Katherine drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time she surfaced, Marcus was there, steady and dependable, his attention focused on the horizon. He gave her water at intervals, never too much at once, always careful. Once he stopped entirely and wet his bandana from the canteen, using it to gently wipe her face and neck, cooling her overheated skin. "How are your feet?" he asked during one of these stops. Katherine looked down at them, dangling limply over his arm. They had swollen to nearly twice their normal size and had taken on an angry red color. "They hurt," she admitted, "but I think I am past the worst of it. Now I just feel numb." Marcus frowned. "That's not necessarily good. We need to get them cleaned and bandaged soon. Infection is the real danger now." "Are you a doctor?" Katherine asked. "No, madam, just a cowboy who's seen his share of injuries and illness. You learn to patch people up when you're days away from the nearest town." He tucked the bandana back into his pocket and adjusted his hold on her. "We're making good time. Should reach the ranch by nightfall." The landscape began to change as they traveled, becoming slightly less barren. Occasional clusters of cottonwood trees appeared, suggesting underground water sources. Katherine spotted a roadrunner darting across the trail and, later, a jackrabbit that paused to watch them pass before bounding away. The land was harsh, but it was alive in ways she had not noticed during her desperate trek. "Tell me about the ranch," Katherine said, needing conversation to keep her mind off the throbbing pain that had returned to her feet with renewed intensity. "The Broken Arrow, it's a good spread, about 2,000 acres. We run mostly cattle, some horses. Mr. Hartwell started it about 15 years ago with his wife, Martha. She died giving birth to their daughter about 5 years back. The baby survived, though. Little Emma. She's a firecracker, that one." Marcus's voice had warmed with obvious affection. "There's about 10 men who work there regular, plus seasonal hands during roundup and branding. It's not the biggest operation in Arizona territory, but it's honest work and fair wages." "You have been there long?" "Going on 3 years now. I drifted some before that, worked ranches in Texas and New Mexico. But Mr. Hartwell treats his men right, and I got tired of wandering." Marcus shifted slightly in the saddle. Sometimes a man finds a place that feels like home, even if it wasn't where he started. Katherine understood that sentiment better than she could express. "Is there a woman at the ranch who could help me?" she asked, suddenly conscious of her bedraggled appearance and the intimate nature of her situation. "Mrs. Chen, the cook and housekeeper. She's from China originally, came over with her husband to work on the railroad. He died in an accident, and she ended up at the ranch about 2 years ago. She's got a good heart and knows her way around injuries and sickness. She'll take care of you." The sun was lowering toward the horizon when buildings finally appeared in the distance. Katherine felt Marcus's body relax slightly, and she realized with a start that he must be exhausted. He had been holding her for hours, his arms never wavering, never complaining. The physical endurance required for such a feat was extraordinary. "Marcus," she said softly, "you should put me down. Let me try to ride behind you. Your arms must be aching." "I'm fine," he said, and there was something in his voice that told her not to argue. "We're almost there." The ranch came into clearer view as they approached. It was more substantial than Katherine had expected. A large main house stood at the center, built of adobe and wood with a wide porch wrapping around 2 sides. Outbuildings clustered nearby, a barn, bunkhouse, smokehouse, and what looked like a workshop. Corrals held horses and cattle, and she could see men moving about their evening chores. Their arrival was noticed immediately. A man emerged from the barn, calling out to others. By the time Marcus rode into the yard, a small crowd had gathered. A tall, gray-haired man, who Katherine assumed was Samuel Hartwell, stepped forward, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Langford, what happened?" "Found her in the desert, Mr. Hartwell. She was on that stagecoach that overturned near Mexican Spring. Been walking for 2 days. Her feet are in bad shape, and she needs water and rest." Marcus spoke with calm authority, and Katherine noticed how the other men listened attentively. "Good Lord," Hartwell said, his eyes moving to Katherine with genuine compassion. "Bring her into the house! Chen!" he called. "We need you!" Marcus dismounted with Katherine still cradled securely in his arms. His legs must have been stiff from hours of riding, but he showed no sign of discomfort as he carried her toward the house. A small, neat woman with graying black hair appeared on the porch, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. "This young lady needs help, Mrs. Chen," Marcus said. "Badly injured feet, dehydration, probably sun sickness too." Mrs. Chen nodded briskly, her face settling into an expression of determined competence. "Bring her to spare room. I get water, bandages, medicine." She disappeared back into the house. Marcus carried Katherine through a tidy parlor and down a short hallway to a small but clean bedroom. He laid her gently on the bed, and Katherine immediately felt the loss of his warmth and strength. She looked up at him, suddenly desperate for him not to leave. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my life." Marcus met her eyes, and something passed between them, an unspoken connection that made Katherine's heart beat faster despite her weakened state. "Just did what anyone would do, madam." "Katherine," she said, "my name is Katherine Claire." "Miss Claire?" he acknowledged with a small nod. "You rest now. Mrs. Chen will take good care of you." He turned to leave, but Katherine reached out, catching his hand. "Will I see you again?" Marcus looked down at their joined hands, then back to her face. A slow smile crossed his features, transforming his serious expression into something warm and open. "This is where I live, Miss Claire. You'll be seeing plenty of me, I expect." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Mrs. Chen proved to be as competent as Marcus had promised. She brought warm water and clean cloths, gently washing away the dust and blood. Katherine cried out when the water touched her feet, the pain shocking in its intensity. I know, Mrs. Chen murmured soothingly. "Must be clean or infection comes. You be strong." Katherine bit down on a leather strap Mrs. Chen offered, tears streaming down her face as the woman carefully cleaned the wounds. The pain was almost unbearable, but she forced herself to remain still. When the cleaning was done, Mrs. Chen applied some kind of salve that smelled of herbs and honey, then wrapped Katherine's feet in soft bandages. "You very lucky that Cowboy found you," Mrs. Chen said as she worked. "Marcus Langford, he is good man. Very strong, very kind, never complains, always helps others." "He carried me for miles," Katherine said weakly. "I have never known anyone with such strength and endurance." Mrs.? Chen nodded knowingly. Not just body strong, heart strong too. He has seen hard things, lost people he loved. But he keeps going, keeps being good. That is real strength. After her feet were bandaged, Mrs. Chen helped Katherine into a clean nightgown, several sizes too large but soft and comfortable. She brought broth and bread, insisting Katherine eat slowly. The food settled warm and nourishing in her stomach, the first proper meal she had eaten in days. Samuel Hartwell appeared in the doorway as Mrs. Chen was tidying up. "Miss Claire, I hope you are feeling somewhat better. I wanted to welcome you to the Broken Arrow and assure you that you are safe here. You may stay as long as you need to recover." "You are very kind, Mr. Hartwell," Katherine said. "I fear I have imposed terribly." "Nonsense. This country teaches us to help one another. Without that, none of us would survive." He smiled, his eyes crinkling. "Besides, Marcus would never forgive me if I turned you out. I have never seen him so determined about anything as he was about getting you here safely." Katherine felt warmth spread through her chest at those words. "He is an exceptional man." "That he is," Hartwell agreed. "One of the best hands I have ever employed, and I have known quite a few in my time. Get some rest now. We can discuss your plans once you have healed." Sleep claimed Katherine almost immediately after Hartwell left. She drifted into deep, dreamless oblivion, her body finally able to relax, knowing she was safe. She woke to sunshine streaming through the window and the sound of chickens clucking outside. For a moment, she could not remember where she was, panic rising until memory returned. The ranch, Marcus, safety. Her feet throbbed with steady, insistent pain. But it was different from the agony of the desert. This was the pain of healing, of flesh knitting back together. She pushed herself up carefully, looking around the room in the morning light. It was simply furnished but comfortable, with a dresser, washstand, and the bed she occupied. Curtains fluttered at the window, and she could see endless sky beyond. A knock sounded at the door, and Mrs. Chen entered carrying a tray. "Good, you awake. I bring breakfast. You must eat, get strength back." She set the tray across Katherine's lap, revealing eggs, bacon, biscuits with honey, and coffee. The smell made Katherine's mouth water. "This looks wonderful," Katherine said gratefully. "You eat, then I change bandages, check feet," Mrs. Chen said. "Later, maybe you sit on porch if you feel strong. Fresh air is good medicine." Katherine ate slowly, savoring every bite. As she did, she heard voices outside, men calling to one another as they went about their work. She wondered if Marcus was among them, and the thought brought a flutter to her stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. After breakfast, Mrs. Chen carefully unwrapped the bandages. Katherine braced herself, but when she looked at her feet, she was relieved to see that, while they were still badly damaged, they did not look infected. The flesh was raw and blistered but clean. "You heal well, Mrs." Chen pronounced with satisfaction. "You young, healthy. Another few days, you maybe walk a little bit. Few weeks, you be fine." "A few weeks?" Katherine felt dismay wash over her. "But I must get to San Francisco. They are expecting me. You write letter, explain what happened. They understand or they not worth working for." Mrs. Chen's logic was irrefutable. "Right now, you rest and heal. That is only job you have." Throughout the day, various people stopped by to check on Katherine. Samuel Hartwell came with his daughter Emma, a bright-eyed little girl of about 5, who regarded Katherine with open curiosity. "Are you going to die?" Emma asked with the blunt honesty of childhood. "Emma," her father said sharply, but Katherine smiled. "No, sweetheart, I am going to be fine. Your father and Mrs. Chen are taking very good care of me." "Marcus says you are very brave," Emma announced. "He says you walked through the desert all by yourself and did not give up even when it hurt really bad. That is what brave means." Katherine felt tears prick her eyes. "Marcus said that?" "At breakfast this morning," Hartwell confirmed. "He seemed quite impressed by your fortitude." Emma moved closer to the bed, her small face serious. "I am glad you did not die. We do not have very many ladies here, just me and Mrs. Chen. Sometimes I get lonely for lady talk." "Well, I shall be happy to provide lady talk while I am here," Katherine promised, charmed by the child. It was late afternoon before Marcus appeared. Katherine had been drowsing, but she came fully awake at the sound of his knock. He stood in the doorway, hat in hand, looking uncertain in a way that seemed at odds with the confident man who had swept her up in the desert. "Miss Claire, I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all. Please, come in." Katherine was acutely aware of her appearance, her hair loose around her shoulders, wearing a borrowed nightgown. But Marcus's eyes held only respect and concern. He moved into the room, but kept a proper distance. "I wanted to see how you were faring. Mrs. Chen says your feet are healing well." "Yes, thanks to you. If you had not found me—" Katherine trailed off, unable to complete the thought. "But I did find you," Marcus said firmly. "No use dwelling on what might have happened." He turned his hat in his hands, a gesture that Katherine was beginning to recognize as a sign of nervousness. "I also wanted to apologize if I was too forward yesterday, carrying you as I did. I know it was not entirely proper, but I could not see another way." "Please do not apologize," Katherine said quickly. "You did what was necessary, and you were completely respectful. I am grateful beyond words." She paused, then added softly, "I felt safe with you. That is no small thing." Marcus's eyes met hers, and Katherine saw something kindle in their gray depths. "I am glad," he said quietly. "Your safety mattered a great deal to me. Even though you did not know me, even though," he confirmed, "although I find myself wanting very much to know you now, if that would not be presumptuous." Katherine's heart raced. "I would like that very much." They talked for over an hour, the conversation flowing with surprising ease. Marcus told her about his life, growing up on a small farm in Missouri, losing his parents to raiders during the border troubles, drifting west to find a new life. His voice grew quiet when he spoke of his younger sister, who had died of fever when she was only 14, just before he left Missouri. "I think about her often," he said. "Wonder what kind of woman she would have become. She was smart as a whip, always reading whatever books she could get her hands on. She would have liked you." Katherine shared her own story, her comfortable childhood in Boston, her father's work as a banker, her mother's dedication to charitable causes. She spoke of the cholera outbreak that had taken both parents within days of each other, of the loneliness that had followed. "I was adrift," she admitted. "Everyone told me to remarry quickly, to find security, but I could not bear the thought of a marriage of convenience. I wanted purpose, something that was mine. Teaching seemed like a way to make a difference." "You still can," Marcus said. "Just maybe not in San Francisco. There are children all over this territory who need education. Emma is learning her letters from her father, but he has limited time and learning himself. Towns are growing, needing schools and teachers." "I had not considered staying in Arizona," Katherine said slowly. "Well, you have time to think on it while you heal." Marcus rose, settling his hat back on his head. "I should let you rest, but I will check on you tomorrow, if that is acceptable." "Very acceptable," Katherine assured him. Over the following days, a routine developed. Mrs. Chen would tend to Katherine's feet each morning and evening, the wounds slowly but steadily improving. Samuel Hartwell would stop by to chat and often brought Emma, who proved to be delightful company. The little girl would bring her slate and proudly show Katherine the letters and simple words she was learning. But the visits Katherine anticipated most were from Marcus. He came every day, usually in the late afternoon after his work was done. He would wash up first, Katherine noticed, his hair damp and his face clean of dust. They would talk for hours about everything and nothing, discovering shared opinions and laughing at each other's stories. Marcus brought her books from the small collection in the bunkhouse, westerns and adventures that were worn from multiple readings. Katherine devoured them eagerly, grateful for the distraction. He brought her wildflowers he had found while riding the range, clumsy bouquets that touched her more than the most expensive roses ever could have. After a week, Mrs. Chen declared that Katherine could try sitting on the porch. Marcus appeared immediately to carry her, lifting her with the same ease he had shown in the desert. Katherine wrapped her arms around his neck, breathing in the now familiar scent of him. "I am getting spoiled," she said, as he navigated through the house. "Soon I will expect to be carried everywhere." Marcus grinned. "I would not object to that arrangement." He settled her in a rocking chair on the porch, making sure she was comfortable before taking a seat on the steps nearby. The view was spectacular, miles of open land stretching to distant mountains. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "It is beautiful here," Katherine said softly. "Wild and harsh, but beautiful. It grows on you, Marcus agreed. When I first came west, I thought I would miss the green of Missouri, the trees and rivers. But this land has its own appeal. It makes you earn its beauty, but that makes it more valuable somehow. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the day fade. Other ranch hands passed by, tipping their hats to Katherine and exchanging friendly words with Marcus. She could feel their curiosity, but also their acceptance. These were men who understood survival and the bonds it created. Emma came running from the direction of the barn, her dress dusty and her face flushed with excitement. "Marcus, Papa says you are going to town tomorrow. Can I come, please?" "That is up to your father, little bit," Marcus said with a smile. "But I believe he planned for you to stay here with Mrs. Chen." Emma's face fell dramatically. "I never get to go anywhere." "You went last month," Marcus reminded her gently. "And you will go again soon. Right now someone needs to keep Miss Claire company while she heals." Emma brightened immediately, turning to Katherine. "I can do that. I am very good company." "The very best," Katherine agreed warmly. After Emma skipped away, Katherine asked, "What takes you to town?" "Supplies mostly. Mr. Hartwell makes a list each month of things we need, also checking for mail and seeing if there is any news." Marcus hesitated, then added, "I could post a letter for you if you wanted to write to your contacts in San Francisco." Katherine had been avoiding that task, but she knew it needed to be done. "That would be helpful, thank you. I shall write it this evening." "Take your time with the decision," Marcus said quietly. "About whether to go to San Francisco at all, I mean. You have options now that you did not have before." "What options are those?" Marcus turned to look at her directly. "Towns like Copper Ridge and Tombstone, they need teachers. The territory is growing fast, filling up with families. You could make a real difference here, maybe more than in a big city where there are already established schools." "Are you suggesting I stay?" Katherine asked, her heart beating faster. "I am suggesting you consider it," Marcus said carefully. "But I will admit to having selfish reasons for the suggestion." "Selfish reasons?" "I find I very much enjoy your company, Miss Claire. The thought of you leaving in a few weeks, of never seeing you again, it does not sit well with me." His voice was steady, but Katherine could see the vulnerability in his eyes. "I know we have not known each other long, and I have no right to ask you to change your plans. But I wanted you to know how I felt." Katherine's breath caught. "Marcus, She paused, gathering her courage. "I enjoy your company as well. Very much. These past days talking with you, they have been the happiest I can remember in a very long time." Something in Marcus's expression softened and intensified simultaneously. "Katherine," he said, her name sounding different on his lips, more intimate. "Would you allow me to court you properly? I know the circumstances are unusual, and you need time to heal and sort out your future, but I would like the chance to see where this might lead." "Yes," Katherine said without hesitation. "I would like that very much." Marcus smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed his face. "Then I shall do my best to make myself worthy of your affection." "You already are," Katherine said softly. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Katherine had experienced in Boston. There were no formal parlor visits or chaperoned outings. Instead, there was honest conversation on the porch as the sun set, shared meals with the ranch family, and Marcus reading aloud to her from the books he loved. He taught her about the land, pointing out the different plants and animals, explaining the rhythms of ranch life. She learned to identify the call of a coyote versus a wolf, to tell the difference between a hawk and a vulture circling overhead, to recognize the signs of coming weather in the clouds and wind. Katherine, in turn, told him about literature and history, about the world beyond Arizona. She discovered that Marcus had a keen intelligence that had been largely self-educated, and he absorbed knowledge eagerly. She began teaching him from the books in Hartwell's small library, and the discussions that followed were lively and engaging. Emma attached herself to Katherine with wholehearted affection. The little girl would sit on the porch with her slate, practicing her letters while Katherine and Marcus talked. Sometimes Katherine would tell her stories, fairy tales from her childhood that Emma had never heard. The girl's eyes would go wide with wonder at tales of castles and princesses, witches and heroes. "Tell the one about Rapunzel again," Emma would beg. "I like how the prince climbs her hair." Samuel Hartwell watched these interactions with approval. One evening, he sat with Katherine after Marcus had left for the bunkhouse. "My daughter has taken quite a shine to you. he observed. "I have not seen her this animated since her mother died." "She is a wonderful child," Katherine said warmly. "You should be very proud." "I am, though I cannot take much credit. She practically raises herself out here, with Mrs. Chen's help." Hartwell paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I can see that you and Marcus have grown close. He is a good man, Miss Claire. One of the best I have known. But the life he can offer would be very different from what you knew in Boston." "I understand that," Katherine said. "But I left Boston seeking something new, a different kind of life. I wanted purpose and meaning, not comfort and convention." Hartwell nodded. "Just make sure you know what you are choosing. Ranch life is hard on women, isolated and demanding. The nearest town is a 2-hour ride, and even that is barely civilized. There are dangers, too, from the land itself and from men with bad intentions. It is not a life for everyone." "I appreciate your honesty," Katherine said, "but I think perhaps I am stronger than I appear. After all, I survived 2 days in the desert." "That you did," Hartwell agreed with a smile. "That you did." After 2 weeks, Katherine was able to take her first tentative steps. Her feet were still tender and heavily bandaged, but the wounds had closed and the swelling had gone down. Mrs. Chen hovered anxiously as Katherine moved slowly across the bedroom, Marcus standing ready to catch her if she fell. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Strange," Katherine admitted, "like learning to walk all over again. But good, I have been desperate to move under my own power." She took a few more steps, growing more confident. When she reached Marcus, he caught her hands, steadying her. They stood close, his hands warm around hers, and Katherine felt the moment stretch and deepen. "You are remarkable," Marcus said quietly. "The strength it took to keep walking in the desert, to survive what you did, and then to heal as quickly as you have. You constantly amaze me." "I had good motivation to heal," Katherine said. "I wanted to be able to walk with you properly, not always being carried." "Though I would happily carry you for the rest of my life if needed," Marcus said with a smile. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat meaningfully from the doorway. "Enough standing for today. You rest now, build strength slowly." Katherine was impatient with the slow pace of recovery, but she forced herself to follow Mrs. Chen's instructions. Each day she walked a little more, first just around the room, then through the house, and finally outside. Marcus was always nearby, ready to support her if needed, though he let her push her limits. 3 weeks after her arrival at the Broken Arrow, Katherine walked to the barn under her own power for the first time. It was a short distance, but it felt like a monumental achievement. Marcus was working with a young horse in the corral, gentling it to saddle and bridle. He looked up at her approach, his face breaking into a wide smile. "Look at you," he called, "walking like you never stopped." Katherine laughed, feeling almost giddy with the accomplishment. "My feet still hurt, and I will probably need to soak them for hours tonight, but I made it." Marcus secured the horse and came to lean on the corral fence beside her. "I am proud of you. Most people would still be lying in bed, feeling sorry for themselves." "I had good reason to get up," Katherine said, meeting his eyes meaningfully. They had not yet kissed, had not even held hands properly beyond the necessary support during her recovery. The propriety of the situation and Katherine's injuries had kept them physically apart, even as they grew emotionally closer. But now, standing in the warm Arizona sun with her hand resting on the fence near his, Katherine felt the pull of attraction strongly. Marcus seemed to feel it too. His hand moved to cover hers, his thumb stroking gently across her knuckles. "Katherine, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I am in love with you." The words were simple, direct, utterly sincere. "I have been falling in love with you since the moment I saw you in the desert, so determined to survive against impossible odds. Every day since then, every conversation, every smile, every moment spent in your company has made me more certain. I love you." Katherine's heart felt like it might burst from her chest. "Marcus, I love you too. I did not know it was possible to feel this way, to be so certain about someone so quickly. But I am certain. I love you." Marcus's hand tightened on hers. "I do not have much to offer, a cowboy's wages, a room in the bunkhouse, but I am a hard worker, and I have been saving my money. In a year or 2, I could afford to build us a small house, start our own place. It would not be fancy, but it would be ours. I do not need fancy. Katherine said fiercely. "I need honest and real. I need someone who sees me as a partner, not an ornament. I need you." "Then marry me," Marcus said. "Not today or tomorrow, but soon, when you are fully healed and certain of your choice. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life making you happy." "Yes," Katherine breathed. "Yes, I will marry you." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses on his palms. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Katherine did not want to pull away. She rose on her toes, ignoring the twinge in her feet, and met his lips with her own. The kiss was everything she had dreamed it might be, tender and passionate, full of promise and hope. Marcus kissed her like she was precious and essential, like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, their foreheads resting together. "I will make you happy," Marcus promised. "I swear it." "You already do," Katherine assured him. They set the wedding date for 6 weeks later, giving Katherine time to fully heal and to make proper arrangements. News of the engagement spread through the ranch quickly, met with universal approval. The ranch hands treated Katherine with the respect due to Marcus's intended, and Mrs. Chen immediately began planning the celebration. Samuel Hartwell gave them his wholehearted blessing. "I cannot think of two people better suited," he said warmly. "Marcus, you have my permission to build a cabin on the northeast corner of the property. There is good water there and a nice spot with some trees for shade. Consider it a wedding gift." Marcus was overwhelmed by the generosity. "Mr. Hartwell, I cannot accept such a gift." "You can and you will," Hartwell said firmly. "You have worked for me faithfully for 3 years, and you will continue to work here after you are married. This way, you will have your own place, but still be part of the ranch family. Besides, Emma would never forgive me if Miss Claire moved too far away." Katherine wrote to her contacts in San Francisco, explaining what had happened and that she would not be taking the teaching position. She also wrote to friends in Boston, sharing her news. The responses that eventually came were uniformly supportive, if surprised. Meanwhile, Katherine began learning the practical skills she would need as a ranch wife. Mrs. Chen taught her to cook hearty meals that would sustain a working man, to bake bread in the temperamental oven, to preserve food for the lean months. She learned to sew and mend, to do laundry in the large tubs, to make soap and candles. She also began teaching in earnest. Word had spread to the nearby ranches and town that an educated woman was at the Broken Arrow, and several families asked if she would teach their children. Katherine agreed enthusiastically, seeing the opportunity to pursue her calling even in this remote place. 3 times a week, children would arrive at the ranch, brought by parents who valued education. Katherine held lessons on the porch when weather permitted, or in the parlor when it did not. She taught reading and writing, arithmetic and geography, using whatever materials she could gather. The children were eager and bright, absorbing knowledge like the thirsty desert soil absorbed rain. Emma was her star pupil, progressing rapidly now that she had consistent instruction. But all the children flourished under Katherine's patient guidance. Parents began talking about building a proper schoolhouse in Copper Ridge, and Katherine was asked if she would serve as the permanent teacher. She agreed, excited by the prospect of making a real difference in the community. Marcus worked with a crew to build their cabin, spending every spare moment on the project. Katherine would walk out to the site each day, her feet now fully healed, to watch the progress. The cabin was small but well constructed, with a main room that would serve as kitchen and parlor, a separate bedroom, and a loft that could be used for storage, or someday for children. "It is perfect," Katherine said, the first time Marcus showed her the interior. The walls were chinked tight against wind and weather, the floor was smooth planks, and a stone fireplace dominated one wall. "I love it." "I am glad," Marcus said, pulling her close. "I wanted to give you something good, something worthy of you." They spent hours furnishing the cabin with pieces bought in town or crafted by Marcus himself. A table and chairs, a bed frame that Marcus built with obvious care, shelves for Katherine's growing collection of books, a rocking chair for the porch. Mrs. Chen contributed quilts and curtains. The other ranch hands donated various household items, and Samuel Hartwell gave them a set of dishes that had belonged to his late wife. Martha would have wanted them to go to a couple starting their life together, he said when Katherine protested the valuable gift. She was sentimental that way. The night before the wedding, Katherine sat on the main house porch with Mrs. Chen. watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. She felt peaceful and certain, without any of the doubts or fears that brides were supposedly meant to experience. "You are happy?" Mrs. Chen asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Katherine confirmed. "Is that strange? That I can be so certain about a man I have known for less than 2 months?" "Not strange," Mrs. Chen said. "Some people know each other for years and never truly see one another. You and Marcus, you see each other truly. That is rare and precious." "How did you know your husband was right for you?" Katherine asked. "Mrs.?" Chen smiled, her eyes distant with memory. "He made me laugh when I was frightened. We came to America knowing no one, speaking little English, facing hardship. But Liang, he would tell jokes and stories, make everything seem possible. When he died, I thought I would never laugh again. But slowly, life returns. You learn to carry grief and joy together." Katherine reached over and squeezed the older woman's hand. "Thank you for taking such good care of me, for teaching me so much. I hope we will continue to be friends." "We are family now," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "That is stronger than friends." The wedding took place on a Sunday afternoon in late September 1877. The day was clear and warm, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of sage. Katherine wore a simple dress of cream-colored cotton that Mrs. Chen had helped her sew, with wildflowers in her hair. She had never felt more beautiful. The ceremony was held outside, with the vast Arizona landscape as backdrop. Nearly everyone from the surrounding area came, ranchers and townspeople and all the hands from the Broken Arrow. The local circuit preacher, a jovial man named Reverend Stone, who traveled between far-flung communities, performed the service. Katherine walked across the yard on Samuel Hartwell's arm, as he had agreed to give her away. But her eyes were only for Marcus, who stood waiting in his best clothes, his hair neatly combed and his eyes shining with emotion. When she reached him, he took her hand and held it like she was the most precious thing in the world. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They exchanged simple vows, promising to love and honor, to stand together through whatever challenges life brought. When Reverend Stone pronounced them husband and wife, Marcus kissed Katherine with tender reverence, and the assembled crowd cheered. The celebration that followed was joyous and boisterous. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with the food, preparing a feast that would be talked about for months. There was music and dancing, with several ranch hands pulling out fiddles and guitars. Marcus proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, guiding Katherine through reels and waltzes with easy confidence. Emma clung to Katherine's skirts for most of the evening, ecstatic to have gained what she considered a sister. "You are staying forever now, right?" she asked anxiously. "You cannot leave because you are married to Marcus." "I am staying forever," Katherine assured her. "You are stuck with me now?" As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Marcus and Katherine slipped away from the celebration. They walked hand in hand to their cabin, which glowed with lamplight from the windows. Someone, probably Mrs. Chen, had lit the lamps and left a cold supper laid out on the table. Marcus lifted Katherine over the threshold, a tradition he had learned from his parents. Once inside, he set her down gently, but did not release her. They stood in the center of their home, their cabin, and looked at each other with wonder. "My wife," Marcus said softly, as if testing out the word. "My husband," Katherine replied, loving the sound of it. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, a gentle exploration that deepened the connection they had already forged. Marcus was patient and considerate, and Katherine was grateful for the intimacy that came from truly knowing and trusting each other. They lay together afterward, Katherine's head on Marcus's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I would walk through that desert 1,000 times if it meant ending up here with you," Katherine said quietly. Marcus's arms tightened around her. "I thank God every day that I found you, that you survived long enough for me to reach you. The thought of you dying out there, of never knowing you." He trailed off, unable to complete the thought. "But you did find me," Katherine said. "You carried me to safety without complaint, never once suggesting you should leave me behind. You saved me in every way a person can be saved." "You saved me too," Marcus said. "I did not realize how lonely I was until you appeared in my life. I had convinced myself that this work, this land, it was enough. But it was not. You make everything brighter, Katherine. You give me purpose beyond simple survival." They talked late into the night, making plans for their future. They discussed expanding the cabin eventually, adding rooms for the children they both hoped to have. They talked about the school Katherine would teach in Copper Ridge, and Marcus's dreams of eventually having his own small herd. Every dream they shared seemed possible, achievable, because they would pursue it together. The early days of marriage were an adjustment, learning to share space and routines, to accommodate another person's needs and preferences. But Katherine and Marcus navigated these challenges with patience and humor. They established rhythms that worked for both of them, Marcus rising early to begin work, while Katherine started the household tasks, coming together for meals and in the evenings. Katherine continued teaching 3 times a week, and the number of students slowly grew. The community did indeed build a schoolhouse in Copper Ridge by the following spring, and Katherine became the official teacher with a small salary. The work was deeply satisfying, seeing young minds develop and expand, knowing she was making a real difference in these children's lives. Marcus thrived in his work at the ranch, taking on more responsibility as Samuel Hartwell recognized his abilities. He was promoted to foreman within a year, overseeing the other hands and helping make decisions about the herd and operations. The additional wages allowed them to begin building their own small herd, purchasing cattle a few at a time. Life was not without its challenges. The winter of their first year together was harsh, with bitter cold and heavy snows that made every task difficult. They lost some cattle to the weather and had anxious weeks worrying about feed supplies. There was also a frightening incident when a group of outlaws passed through the territory, stealing horses and causing trouble. Marcus joined the posse that tracked them down, and Katherine spent 2 terrified days not knowing if he would return safely. When he did, bruised and exhausted but unharmed, she held him for a long time, thanking Providence for his safety. But these difficulties only served to strengthen their bond. They learned to rely on each other completely, to communicate openly about fears and concerns, to celebrate victories together and mourn losses as one. Their love deepened from the initial passionate attraction into something more profound and enduring, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. Emma remained a constant presence in their lives, dividing her time between the main house and their cabin. Katherine tutored her beyond the general lessons, recognizing the girl's keen intelligence and thirst for knowledge. Marcus taught her to ride and rope, skills that would serve her well in this country. Between them, they gave the girl the attention and guidance she needed, while Samuel Hartwell looked on with gratitude. "You two are better for her than I could be alone," he told them one evening. "She needs that feminine influence, that example of what a good marriage looks like. Thank you for including her in your lives so completely." "She is family," Katherine said simply. "We love her." Their first anniversary arrived in a blur of happiness and hard work. Marcus surprised Katherine with a gift, a beautiful leather-bound journal and a set of pens. "For your thoughts," he said, "and maybe someday for stories you might want to write down. I know you have them in you." Katherine was touched beyond words. She had mentioned once, months ago, that she had always dreamed of writing, but had never had the courage to try. That Marcus had remembered and acted on that casual comment spoke volumes about his attention and care. She began writing that night, recording the story of their meeting and courtship, wanting to preserve every detail. The writing came easier than she expected, flowing naturally as she relived those early days of fear and hope, desperation and salvation. Over time, she filled the journal and then others, expanding beyond their personal story to document life in the territory, the people she met, the struggles and triumphs of building a life in a harsh land. In the spring of their second year together, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. The news filled both of them with joy and a hint of fear, knowing the dangers that childbirth could bring, especially in such a remote location. But Mrs. Chen was experienced with delivering babies, and the nearest town had a doctor who, while not formally trained, had successfully handled many difficult births. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Katherine continued teaching almost until her final month. Marcus was attentive and protective without being overbearing, understanding her need to remain active and useful. He built a cradle with his own hands, sanding the wood until it was smooth as silk, wanting everything to be perfect for their child. Their son was born on a cold November morning in 1879, arriving after a long but uncomplicated labor. Marcus was present throughout, holding Katherine's hand and offering encouragement. When the baby finally emerged, healthy and howling, they both wept with relief and joy. they named him Michael James Langford after Marcus's father. He was a beautiful baby, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would eventually settle into the same gray as his father's. Katherine had never known love could expand to encompass so much, that her heart had room for both her husband and this tiny new person who depended on them completely. Marcus was a devoted father from the first moment, sitting with the baby for hours, marveling at the tiny perfection of fingers and toes. He would walk the floor with Michael when he fussed, singing off-key lullabies that somehow always worked. Watching her strong, capable husband hold their delicate son with such tender care, Katherine fell in love with Marcus all over again, in new and deeper ways. Emma was enchanted with the baby, begging to hold him and help care for him. At 9 years old, she was old enough to be genuinely useful, and Katherine appreciated the assistance. The girl would sing to Michael and tell him stories, and the baby seemed to respond to her voice, calming when she spoke. Life settled into new patterns around the baby's needs and routines. Katherine took a break from teaching for several months, focusing on motherhood. But by the following spring, when Michael was 6 months old, she began taking him to the schoolhouse with her, setting up a small area where he could sleep or play while she taught. The students were delighted to have a baby in the classroom and were remarkably helpful, taking turns entertaining him during breaks. Marcus continued to excel in his work, and Samuel Hartwell increasingly relied on his judgment. There was talk of making Marcus a partner in the ranch, a prospect that both excited and humbled him. "I never imagined I would have such opportunities," he told Katherine one evening as they sat on their porch, watching Michael crawl determinedly across the floor. "When I left Missouri, I was just trying to survive, to find a place where I belonged. Now I have a wife I adore, a son who amazes me, meaningful work, and a community that feels like home. It is more than I ever dreamed possible." "We have been blessed," Katherine agreed. "But we have also worked hard for what we have, building this life together. You should be proud of what you have accomplished." "I am proud," Marcus said, "but I am more grateful. Grateful that you walked into that desert, that I was in the right place to find you, that you said yes to this life with me." Katherine leaned against him, their bodies fitting together with the ease of long familiarity. "I am grateful, too, for your strength and kindness, for the way you never once complained about carrying me all those miles. You could have left me, told me it was too far or too difficult, but you did not hesitate." "How could I?" Marcus said simply. "You needed help, and I could provide it. That is what decent people do for each other. But I will admit," he added with a smile, "I had selfish motivations even then. Even half dead from the desert, you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. And there was something in your eyes, a determination and strength that called to me. I knew I wanted to know you better." "Good thing you were strong," Katherine teased. 8 miles is a long way to carry someone." "I would have carried you 80 miles if needed," Marcus said seriously. "You were worth every step." Over the next several years, their family and their prosperity grew. Katherine gave birth to a daughter, Sarah, in 1881, and then another son, Thomas, in 1884. Each pregnancy and birth went smoothly, and their cabin expanded to accommodate the growing family. Marcus and some of the other hands added 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen, transforming the small cabin into a comfortable home. Their cattle herd grew as well, allowing them more financial security. Marcus became a full partner in the Broken Arrow in 1883, a testament to his hard work and Samuel Hartwell's trust. The arrangement was beneficial for everyone involved, and the ranch prospered under their joint management. Katherine's school in Copper Ridge became one of the finest in the territory, attracting families who valued education. She employed 2 assistant teachers to help manage the growing enrollment, and the schoolhouse was expanded twice. She wrote articles about education and frontier life that were published in Eastern newspapers and magazines, gaining a small but dedicated readership. The extra income from her writing and teaching gave them the means to provide their children with opportunities they might not otherwise have had. Emma grew into a capable and intelligent young woman who helped Katherine at the school and assisted her father at the ranch. She was courted by several young men, but was particular about who she spent time with, having high standards learned from watching Katherine and Marcus's relationship. Life was not without sorrows. Samuel Hartwell died peacefully in his sleep in 1886. Leaving the ranch entirely to Marcus and a substantial inheritance to Emma. His death was mourned by the entire community, but there was comfort in knowing he had lived to see both his business and his daughter thriving. Mrs. Chen remained with them, becoming an indispensable part of the extended family. She helped raise Katherine and Marcus's children, teaching them practical skills and sharing stories of her homeland. The children adored her, calling her grandmother Chen, and she glowed under their affection. On their 10th anniversary, Marcus and Katherine returned to the place where they had first met. They rode out into the desert on a clear autumn day, Michael, now a sturdy boy of 7, coming along with them, while the younger children stayed with Mrs. Chen. They stood in the endless expanse of sand and sage, remembering. "It seems impossible that this is where it all started," Katherine said, shading her eyes against the sun. "That I was so close to death, so desperate and alone." "But you were not alone," Marcus reminded her. "Not really. God or fate or whatever you want to call it, it brought me to you exactly when you needed me." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not found me?" Katherine asked. "If you had gone a different direction or been delayed?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "I refuse to imagine a world without you in it. You are too essential to everything I am now." Michael, who had been listening with the serious attention children sometimes bring to adult conversations, said, "Papa carried Mama for miles and miles when her feet were bleeding. That is what love means." Katherine and Marcus exchanged a look, touched by their son's simple understanding. "That is part of what love means." Marcus agreed. "Love means doing what is necessary to protect and care for the people who matter most, even when it is difficult or costly. But also," Katherine added, "love means accepting help when you need it, trusting someone else to carry you when you cannot carry yourself. Your father saved me that day, but I had to let him. I had to trust him and believe he would keep his word." They spent an hour at that place, telling Michael the full story of how they had met, wanting him to understand the foundation of their family. Then they rode back to the ranch, to their home and their life, grateful for every moment they had been given. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. Marcus turned 40 in 1890, his hair starting to show silver at the temples, but his body still strong and capable. Katherine was 35, her beauty mellowed, but not diminished by time and experience. Their children were growing into remarkable individuals. Michael, serious and hardworking like his father. Sarah, creative and empathetic. Thomas, adventurous and curious about everything. Emma married in 1891, choosing a good man named Daniel Foster, who owned a successful mercantile in Copper Ridge. The wedding was a joyous celebration, and Katherine cried with happiness, watching the young woman she had helped raise start her own family. Emma and Daniel built a house in town, and Emma took over running the school, allowing Katherine to reduce her teaching schedule and focus more on her writing. Katherine published a book in 1893, a collection of stories about life in the Arizona Territory. It sold modestly but received positive reviews, and she was invited to give talks in larger cities like Phoenix and Tucson. Marcus accompanied her on these trips, proud of her accomplishments and content to support her growing career. They celebrated their 20th anniversary in 1897, with a large party attended by friends and family from throughout the territory. As Katherine looked around at the gathered crowd, at the grown children and dear friends, at the prosperous ranch and thriving community, she was overwhelmed with gratitude. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the children were in bed, Katherine and Marcus sat on their porch, as they had done countless times before. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the night air was cool and pleasant. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Katherine asked. "After you gave me water?" "I said a lot of things," Marcus replied with a smile. "You said the nearest town was 15 miles away, but there was a ranch 8 miles south. And then you said you were not the kind of man who leaves a lady to die in the desert." "I remember," Marcus confirmed. "That moment changed everything," Katherine said softly. "You could have given me water and directions, pointed me toward the ranch and wished me luck. Most men would have considered that sufficient help, but you picked me up and carried me every step of those 8 miles. You did not complain once or suggest I should try walking. You just carried me, as though it was the most natural thing in the world." "It was the most natural thing in the world," Marcus said. "You needed help, and I could provide it. There was no decision to make." "But there was," Katherine insisted. "You chose compassion over convenience. You chose my life over your comfort. That choice revealed your character in a way that nothing else could have. I knew in that moment, even half-conscious and in terrible pain, that you were someone special. Marcus reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining with practiced ease. I knew you were special too. The strength it took to survive what you did, to keep going when most people would have laid down and died. I had never met anyone with that kind of will to live. We saved each other, Katherine said. You saved my body, but I think I saved your spirit. You said yourself that you were lonely, just going through the motions. We gave each other purpose and meaning. The best kind of love, Marcus agreed. The kind where both people are better together than they could ever be apart. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night sky and listening to the peaceful sounds of the ranch settling for the evening. Inside, their children slept safe and secure. Around them, the land they had worked so hard to build a life on stretched into the darkness. Sometimes I still see you walking toward me across the sand, Marcus said quietly. In dreams or in memory, the blood on your feet, the determination in your eyes, and every time I feel the same surge of purpose, the same need to protect and help you. That feeling has never faded. I see you too, Katherine said, riding toward me like salvation, like an answer to every prayer I had whispered. And I feel the same absolute certainty that you were meant for me, that everything I had endured was leading me to that moment, to you. Marcus lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For walking into that desert, for surviving long enough for me to find you, for saying yes when I asked you to marry me, for building this life with me, for giving me our children, for being my partner in every possible way. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. Thank you for 20 years of happiness I never thought I would have. Katherine felt tears well in her eyes. Thank you for carrying me, she whispered, not just that day in the desert, but every day since, through illnesses and difficulties, through the hard times and the good. You have carried me in so many ways, Marcus. You have been my strength when I was weak, my hope when I was discouraged. You have given me a love that has been the foundation of everything good in my life. They kissed then, a kiss that held 20 years of love and commitment, of shared joys and survived sorrows, of intimacy and partnership. When they broke apart, both were smiling through their tears. The story of how Katherine Claire met Marcus Langford, of how he carried her bleeding and exhausted across 8 miles of desert without complaint, became a legend in the territory. People told it as an example of true love, of the kind of selfless devotion that could exist between two people. Children heard it as a bedtime story. Young couples invoked it as the standard they aspired to in their own relationships. But for Katherine and Marcus, it was simply the beginning of their story, the foundation of a life built on mutual respect, unwavering support, and deep, abiding love. The desert that had nearly claimed Katherine's life instead gave her everything she had ever dreamed of, and more than she had known to hope for. Their children grew and had families of their own. Michael became a rancher like his father, expanding the Broken Arrow into one of the largest operations in Arizona. Sarah married a lawyer and moved to Phoenix, where she became involved in charitable work and women's rights advocacy. Thomas fulfilled his adventurous spirit by becoming a surveyor, mapping the wild places of the West and writing about his experiences. Marcus and Katherine became grandparents, then great-grandparents, watching their family tree spread and flourish. They remained active well into their later years, Marcus still involved in ranch operations into his 60s, Katherine still writing and teaching occasional classes until she was past 70. They sat on their porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sun, set over land they knew intimately after decades of living on it. They told stories to the grandchildren who came to visit, about the old days when the territory was wilder and life was harder. But the story they told most often, the one that never failed to captivate, was the story of how they met. "Your grandfather saved my life," Katherine would say, looking at Marcus with eyes that still held all the love of their youth. "Your grandmother's courage saved mine," Marcus would reply, squeezing her hand gently. And the children would listen, wide-eyed, learning about love and sacrifice, about strength and compassion, about two people who found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something beautiful together. As the years passed and their bodies grew frail, they remained devoted to each other. Marcus still insisted on carrying Katherine over any threshold they crossed together, a tradition maintained from their wedding day. It took him longer now, and sometimes he needed help, but he refused to abandon the practice. "I carried you 8 miles once," he would say with a grin. "I can manage a few feet now." They celebrated their 50th anniversary in 1927, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The party was held at the Broken Arrow, which was now run by Michael, but still felt like home. Katherine wore white again, a gift from her daughters and daughters-in-law, and Marcus wore his best suit, his hair now fully silver, but his eyes still the same striking gray. As they danced together, moving slowly to music played by some of their grandchildren, Katherine rested her head on Marcus's shoulder. 50 years, she marveled. It seems both longer and shorter than that. Every day with you has been a gift, Marcus said. Even the hard days, the sad days. I would not trade a single moment. Nor would I, Katherine agreed. You have been everything I needed and more than I knew to want. My rescuer, my partner, my love. Always, Marcus promised. For whatever time we have left, and then beyond that. You have my heart forever, Katherine. They continued dancing, surrounded by the family they had created together, the legacy of love that would continue long after they were gone. The story of how Marcus Langford carried Katherine Claire 8 miles across the desert would be told and retold through generations, a testament to the power of compassion, the strength of love, and the miracles that can happen when two souls find each other against impossible odds. Marcus died peacefully in his sleep in 1932, at the age of 82. Katherine held his hand as he took his last breath, whispering words of love and gratitude. She mourned deeply, but without regret, knowing they had been blessed with more years together than most couples could hope for. She followed him 6 months later, her body simply giving up, without the partner it had known for over half a century. Her children and grandchildren gathered around her bed as she slipped away, and her last words were spoken with a smile. I see him, she whispered. Marcus is here. He has come to carry me home. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their headstones simple but bearing an inscription that captured the essence of their love. Marcus Langford, 1850, 1932, Katherine Claire. Langford, 1855, 1932. He carried her 8 miles without complaint. She loved him for 50 years, without regret, together forever. The Broken Arrow continued to thrive under the management of their descendants, and the schoolhouse Katherine founded in Copper Ridge was renamed in her honor. Her books remained in print, introducing new generations to the realities and romance of the Old West. Marcus's reputation as a man of integrity and compassion became legendary in the territory, an example of what it meant to live honorably. But more than any public legacy, Katherine and Marcus left behind something more precious, a family built on love, a community enriched by their presence, and a story that would be told as long as people believed in the power of two hearts finding each other in the wilderness and choosing to walk together through whatever challenges life brought. Their love story began with bleeding feet and a strong man's compassion. It grew through shared work and mutual respect. It deepened through the challenges of building a life in a harsh land. And it endured through decades of devotion, creating something beautiful and lasting that touched countless lives. In the end, Katherine and Marcus's story was not just about survival or rescue, though those elements were certainly present. It was about two people who recognized something essential in each other, who chose love over convenience, who built a partnership based on equality and shared dreams. It was about the transformative power of compassion and the miracles that can happen when someone decides to carry another's burdens as their own. The desert that nearly claimed Katherine's life instead became the birthplace of a love that would span decades and create a legacy that would endure for generations. And at the heart of it all was one simple, powerful act. A cowboy who found a suffering woman and carried her 8 miles to safety without complaint, never once setting her down, never once suggesting she was too much trouble or too heavy a burden. That act of selfless compassion changed 2 lives and created a family whose descendants would carry forward the values Marcus and Katherine lived by: love, devotion, sacrifice, courage, compassion. These were the gifts they gave to each other and to all who came after them. Their story lived on, told and retold, inspiring others to acts of kindness and reminding people that love, real love, is found not in grand gestures or easy times, but in the choice to carry another's burdens, to walk beside them through difficulty, to never give up on each other no matter how hard the journey becomes. Katherine's feet had bled from walking through that merciless desert, and Marcus had carried her miles without complaint, never setting her down once. That was how their story began. But it was not how their story ended. Their story ended with 50 years of love, with children and grandchildren who carried their legacy forward, with a life well lived and a love that transcended even death itself. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, two souls walk together still, Marcus strong and steadfast, Katherine brilliant and brave, partners forever in the greatest adventure of all.